The great chamber stretched out like a metal ocean under the artificial suns that hung from the curved ceiling. Jake Morrison had seen this place many times before, but today it felt different. Today the air itself seemed to buzz with something dangerous. He sat alone in the human section, while around him thousands of alien beings filled the endless rows of seats. Jake had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 12 years. He had shaken hands with creatures that had tentacles instead of fingers, and had learned to read the body language of beings that communicated through color changes. He had negotiated trade deals and peace treaties and had always found a way to make things work. But today was different. The vote had been building for months. Species after species had spoken against humanity. They called humans too aggressive and too unpredictable. They said human colonies expanded too fast and human traders took too many risks. They feared what humans might do next. The Altarians had been the first to formally propose exile. Their representative was a tall blue creature with 6 arms who spoke in a voice like wind chimes. She had stood before the council and said that humans were a danger to galactic peace. The Zephyrians had agreed, and so had the Centauri Republic. Soon it seemed like every major power in the galaxy was nodding along. Jake had tried to fight back. He had given speech after speech explaining how humans had helped solve conflicts and had opened new trade routes. He had shown them the medical advances humans had shared and the technologies they had given freely to other species. But fear was stronger than gratitude. Now the final vote was happening. The massive holographic display above the chamber showed the tally as it came in. Each species could cast 1 vote, and there were 847 species in the council. Jake watched the numbers climb. 700 votes for Exile, 710, 720. The number kept growing like a disease. Council Prime Zethkri floated above the chamber in his biomechanical support chair. The old creature looked like a cross between an octopus and a tree, and his voice echoed from speakers throughout the room. Jake had always respected Zethkri, but today he saw something ugly in the ancient being's manner. "The final count is recorded," Zethkri announced. His translator made his words sound cold and mechanical. 734 species vote in favor of human exile. 89 vote against. 24 abstain from voting. The chamber erupted in sounds that no human throat could make. Clicks and whistles and deep rumbling noises filled the air. Jake sat perfectly still as alien beings around him celebrated what they saw as a victory for galactic security. "The human species will be confined to their home system," Zethkri continued. "All human colonies beyond the Sol system will be evacuated within 1 standard galactic cycle. All human trade vessels will return to Earth space. Any violation of this exile will be met with immediate military response from the combined galactic fleet." Jake stood up slowly. The chamber grew quiet as thousands of alien eyes turned toward the lone human representative. He could feel their fear even across the vast distances of the chamber. They were afraid of him and of his species, and that fear had just condemned humanity to isolation. "You have made a grave mistake today," Jake said. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's audio systems. "Humanity has always been at its best when our backs are against the wall. You think you are protecting yourselves, but you have just created the very thing you fear most." He walked toward the exit as alien voices rose behind him. Some called for him to be arrested. Others demanded he explain his threat. But Jake Morrison had nothing more to say to them. He had work to do. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks through the standard hyperspace routes. Jake spent most of the time in his cabin writing reports and sending encrypted messages ahead of his ship. By the time his transport dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, he could see that preparations were already beginning. The orbital stations around Earth were buzzing with activity. Ships were arriving from every human colony in the galaxy. The lunar shipyards were running at full capacity, and Mars was mobilizing its defense fleet. Admiral Kate Sullivan had not waited for Jake's return to begin humanity's response to exile. Jake's shuttle landed at Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado. The base was built into the Rocky Mountains and extended deep underground. It had been humanity's military command center for over a century, and now it would become something more. Admiral Sullivan met Jake at the landing pad. She was a small woman with gray hair and steel in her eyes. Jake had known her for 10 years and had never seen her look more determined. "How bad is it?" she asked as they walked through the mountain corridors toward the command center. "As bad as we expected," Jake replied. "Maybe worse. They are not just exiling us. They are afraid of us, real fear. The kind that makes people do stupid things. Good, Kate said. Fear will make them predictable. They entered the command center and Jake saw the scope of what Kate had already put into motion. Wall-sized screens showed the locations of every human colony and outpost in the galaxy. Transport schedules filled other displays. Resource inventories scrolled past faster than Jake could read. Operation Exodus is already underway, Kate explained. Every human ship and station beyond Sol is being recalled. But we are not bringing them home to surrender. We are bringing them home to prepare. Colonel Ryan Brooks approached with a datapad in his hands. He was a young officer with nervous energy and sharp intelligence. Admiral, the last transport from the Kepler colonies just jumped to hyperspace. All personnel and equipment will be back in Sol system within 6 months. Kate nodded. What about the special cargo? Ryan's expression grew more serious. The science teams have secured all alien technology samples. The Voidstalker artifacts from the Helix dig site are being transported under maximum security. And the intelligence files are already being analyzed. Jake raised an eyebrow. Intelligence files? Kate smiled for the first time since his return. 12 years of diplomatic contact leaves quite a paper trail. We know the political structure of every species that voted against us. We know their trade routes and their military capabilities. We know which ones are enemies and which ones might become allies. You planned for this, Jake realized. I planned for the possibility, Kate corrected. Hope for the best and prepare for the worst. That has always been the human way. Jake looked at the screens showing human ships streaming back toward Earth like rivers flowing to the sea. Each ship carried not just people but knowledge and technology and experience. The galaxy thought it was weakening humanity by forcing them back to one star system. They had no idea they were about to create something entirely new. What happens now? Jake asked. Kate's smile grew wider and more dangerous. Now we show them what humans can do when we stop playing by other people's rules. 6 months had passed since the galaxy voted to exile humanity, and the results were not what the Galactic Council had expected. Instead of a defeated species limping home in shame, they saw something that made them deeply uncomfortable. Human ships moved through space with purpose and organization that spoke of careful planning rather than desperate retreat. Captain Lisa Chen stood on the bridge of her cargo vessel Freedom's Edge as Earth grew larger in the main view screen. Behind her ship stretched a convoy of 30 other vessels, all loaded with materials that would have made the Galactic Council very nervous if they knew what humanity was carrying home. Lisa had been a trade captain for 8 years before the exile. She knew the shipping routes between human colonies better than anyone, and she had used that knowledge well during the evacuation. Her cargo holds were not filled with furniture and personal belongings like most refugee ships. Instead, she carried something far more valuable: docking control. This is Freedom's Edge requesting priority berthing at Station 7, Lisa said into her communication system. Freedom's Edge, you are cleared for docking bay 12. Admiral Sullivan wants to see you immediately upon arrival. Lisa smiled. Kate Sullivan had been very specific about what she wanted the evacuation ships to bring back. Personal items could be replaced, but alien technology could not be bought or stolen once humanity was cut off from galactic trade. The docking process took an hour, but finally, Lisa was walking through the corridors of Earth's largest orbital station. The place buzzed with activity like nothing she had ever seen. Construction crews worked around the clock expanding the station, while engineers tested new equipment that looked like nothing she recognized. Admiral Sullivan met her in Cargo Bay 12. The older woman looked tired but satisfied as she watched teams of technicians carefully unload Lisa's precious cargo. How much did you manage to bring back? Kate asked. 40 tons of Altarian gravity manipulation equipment, Lisa replied. 20 tons of Zephyrian power cells, and the really good stuff is in the sealed containers. Kate's eyes lit up. The Centauri sensor arrays? Every piece of advanced detection equipment I could buy, steal, or salvage from the Kepler colonies before we left. Plus complete technical manuals and manufacturing specifications. Outstanding. Dr. Turner is going to be very happy. Dr. Alex Turner was indeed happy. In his laboratory aboard Luna Station, he had been working 18-hour days for months trying to understand alien technology that humanity had only been allowed to use, never to study. The exile had changed that completely. Alex held up a small device that glowed with soft blue light. His assistant, Dr. Maria Santos, watched nervously as he adjusted controls on a testing apparatus. The Altarians have been using gravity manipulation for over 2,000 years, Alex explained. But they never thought to combine it with human fusion technology. They use it for transportation and construction. We are going to use it for something entirely different. The device in Alex's hand suddenly became weightless. It floated up toward the ceiling of the laboratory as if gravity had forgotten it existed. But more importantly, everything else in the room became slightly heavier as the device stole gravitational force from its surroundings. "It works," Maria whispered. "We can actually redistribute gravitational fields." "This is just the beginning," Alex said. "Wait until you see what happens when we scale it up and add military applications." While scientists worked in laboratories, other humans were engaged in more dangerous tasks. Commander Ben Hughes led his team through the ruins of an ancient battlefield on the edge of human space. The place had been forbidden territory for good reason. The Voidstalkers had been an ancient species that disappeared from the galaxy millions of years ago. They left behind artifacts that no living species fully understood but everyone feared. The weapons and technology scattered across dead worlds like this one had power that seemed to violate the known laws of physics. "Contact. It's ahead," whispered Sergeant Tim. Blake. His scanner showed energy readings that should not have been possible from technology that old. Ben studied the readings and felt a familiar chill. The galaxy had forbidden anyone from studying Voidstalker artifacts for good reason. Every species that had tried to use them had either disappeared or gone insane. But humanity was running out of options and desperate times called for desperate measures. There, Ben pointed to a structure that seemed to bend light around itself. "That's definitely Voidstalker construction. Set up the containment field and let's see what we're dealing with." The artifact looked like a piece of twisted metal about the size of a baseball bat. It hummed with energy that made Ben's teeth ache and his vision blur around the edges. But the containment field held, and soon the artifact was secured in a specially shielded transport container. "How many more sites are we hitting?" Tim asked. 17, Ben replied. "Admiral Sullivan wants every piece of Voidstalker technology we can safely transport. The galaxy is afraid of this stuff for a reason. That makes it exactly what we need." Back on Earth, President Helen Carter stood before a gathering of world leaders in the emergency session hall beneath Geneva. The room had been built to withstand nuclear war, but today it hosted something potentially more dangerous. "The Exile gives us an opportunity," Helen said. "For the first time in human history, we can develop our technology without alien oversight or restrictions. We can study things they forbade us from touching. We can build things they would never allow." Prime Minister David Wong of the Pacific Federation raised his hand. "What about retaliation? If they discover what we are doing, they might decide exile is not enough." "Let them try," Helen replied. "Admiral Sullivan's projections show that we will be ready for anything they can throw at us within 2 years. The galaxy thinks they have weakened us by cutting us off from their trade and technology. They have actually freed us to become something they cannot control." General Amy Foster stood up from her seat at the military section of the table. "Madame President, I need authorization to begin Phase 2 of the defense preparations." "Granted. Begin recruitment and training immediately." Amy smiled. Phase 2 was something the galaxy would never see coming. Human soldiers enhanced with alien technology and trained to fight using tactics no other species had ever imagined. The Exile was turning into the best thing that had ever happened to human military development. In orbit above Earth, construction crews worked around the clock building new facilities that stretched the boundaries of human engineering. Shipyards that could build vessels larger than anything humanity had ever attempted. Research stations that could safely study the most dangerous artifacts in the galaxy. Weapons platforms that could defend against threats the galaxy had never faced. Captain Steve Rogers supervised the construction of Defense Platform Alpha. The massive structure bristled with weapons, systems that combined human military doctrine with alien technology in ways that would have terrified the Galactic Council. "How long until the platform is operational?" asked his chief engineer. 6 months, Steve replied. "By then we'll have 12 more just like it." The galaxy wanted to isolate us in our own system. They're about to learn that our system is the most dangerous place in the galaxy. 2 years had passed since the Exile began, and Earth's solar system had become unrecognizable. Where once there had been a few space stations and mining operations, now there were hundreds of installations that hummed with constant activity. The orbital infrastructure around Earth had tripled in size. and Mars had been transformed from a small colony world into a fortress that bristled with defensive systems engineer. Tony Mitchell stood in Laboratory Complex 7 on the far side of the moon, staring at the machine that might change everything. The prototype looked like a metal ring about 10 feet across, covered in devices that glowed with strange energy patterns. It had taken him and his team 18 months to build it using principles that no human had understood 3 years ago. "Run the final diagnostic check," Tony called to his assistant, Dr. Carol Price. She worked at a control station that combined human computers with Altarian processing units and Voidstalker energy systems in ways that should have been impossible. "All systems show green," Carol replied. "Power levels are stable and the quantum field generators are operating within normal parameters." Tony nodded but felt nervous sweat on his forehead. The quantum tunnel drive represented humanity's boldest attempt to break free from the limitations the galaxy had placed on them. Every species in the galaxy used hyperspace for faster-than-light travel, but hyperspace required navigation beacons that the Galactic Council controlled. Without access to those beacons, humanity was trapped in their home system. But Tony's drive worked differently. Instead of using the established hyperspace routes, it could create new pathways through spacetime itself. The theory came from studying Voidstalker artifacts, while the practical engineering used modified Altarian gravity manipulation technology. If it worked, humanity would no longer need anyone's permission to travel between stars. "Begin the test sequence," Tony ordered. The ring began to spin and reality seemed to bend around it. Spacetime twisted and folded until a tunnel of swirling energy appeared in the center of the ring. Through the tunnel, Tony could see stars that were light years away from Earth. "It's stable," Carol announced with excitement in her voice. "The tunnel is holding and we're reading clear space on the other side." Tony smiled for the first time in months. "Contact Admiral Sullivan immediately. Tell her we don't need their roads anymore." In another part of the lunar complex, General Amy Foster watched as the first graduates of humanity's new training program demonstrated abilities that would have shocked the galaxy. The soldiers moved with speed and precision that seemed superhuman, because in many ways it was. Private Jack Davis lifted a piece of equipment that weighed over 500 pounds as if it were made of paper. The Voidstalker technology integrated into his armor didn't just make him stronger, it made him faster and smarter too. His reaction time had improved by 70%, and his situational awareness was enhanced by sensors that could detect threats across multiple spectrums. "How do you feel, Davis?" Amy asked. "Like I could take on a Zephyrian shock trooper and win, ma'am," Jack replied. His voice came through speakers in his helmet, but Amy could hear the confidence behind it. Amy had studied alien military capabilities for her entire career. She knew that most species had natural advantages over baseline humans. The Zephyrians were faster and stronger. The Altarians could fly and had natural armor. The Centauri had telepathic coordination that made their units fight like a single organism. But the new human soldiers were different. The armor and enhancements gave them physical capabilities that matched or exceeded any alien species, while human tactical thinking and adaptability remained unchanged. Amy suspected that these soldiers could outfight anything the galaxy could send against them. "Davis, I want you to run the full combat simulation," Amy ordered. "Let's see what you can do against a mixed alien unit." Jack nodded and walked toward the training area where holographic enemies waited. Within minutes he was fighting simulated Zephyrian warriors and Altarian flyers while coordinating with other enhanced soldiers through a neural link system that the galaxy had never imagined. In the medical research complex on Mars, Dr. Paul Baker made a discovery that opened entirely new possibilities for human enhancement. He had been studying genetic samples from dozens of alien species, samples that had been collected during humanity's decades as members of galactic civilization. "The interesting thing," Paul explained to his research team, "is that most alien advantages come from fairly simple genetic modifications. Enhanced reflexes, improved strength, telepathic sensitivity. These are all traits that can be temporarily induced in human subjects." Dr. Linda White looked skeptical. "Temporarily? The enhancements last for several months before the human immune system rejects them," Paul replied. "But during that time, a human subject gains abilities that rival natural alien capabilities." Paul held up a vial of blue liquid that seemed to glow with its own light. "This serum contains modified Centauri genetic factors. A human who takes it gains limited telepathic abilities and enhanced pattern recognition. The effects last about 4 months. Have you tested it on human subjects? Linda asked. I volunteered myself for the first trial, Paul said. The results were remarkable. I could sense the emotional states of people around me and predict their behavior with extraordinary accuracy. More importantly, I became resistant to telepathic influence from actual Centauri subjects. Paul's breakthrough meant that humanity could give their people temporary access to alien abilities while maintaining the advantages that made humans unique. Telepathic aliens would find their mental attacks useless against enhanced humans. Species that relied on superior reflexes would discover that humans could match their speed. The galaxy's natural advantages were becoming meaningless. Captain Steve Rogers finished the final inspection of the defense platform that would protect Earth's moon from alien attack. The massive structure combined human military engineering with alien technology to create something that had never existed in the galaxy before. The plasma cannon array is ready for testing, reported Lieutenant Nancy Clark. We're drawing power directly from the lunar fusion reactors. Steve nodded as he looked at the weapons that could destroy alien battleships from distances they had never imagined possible. The platform also carried missile systems that used Voidstalker propulsion technology to achieve speeds that made interception nearly impossible. What about the stealth system? Steve asked. Operational and tested, Nancy replied. The Altarian cloaking technology combined with Voidstalker energy dampeners makes us invisible to every scanning method in the galactic database. Steve smiled. The defense platforms would be humanity's first surprise for any alien fleet foolish enough to attack Earth. But they were only the beginning. Admiral Sullivan had authorized the construction of mobile weapons platforms that could take the fight-to-enemy systems if necessary. The galaxy had tried to weaken humanity by cutting them off from alien technology and forcing them back to their home system. Instead, they had given humans the motivation and freedom to combine technologies in ways no species had ever attempted. What emerged from that combination was not a defeated and isolated species, but something entirely new and potentially more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity was no longer playing by the galaxy's rules, and that made them unpredictable in ways that would soon terrify their former neighbors. 5 years had passed since the galaxy voted to exile humanity, and the results were beyond what anyone had predicted. The galactic civilization that had seemed so stable and peaceful was falling apart without human involvement. Trade routes that humans had maintained for decades were collapsing into chaos. Conflicts that human diplomats had kept under control were exploding into full-scale wars. Species that had cooperated for centuries were now viewing each other with suspicion and fear. From Earth, humanity watched the galaxy tear itself apart with careful attention. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, studying intelligence reports that painted a picture of civilization in decline. Her networks of informants and monitoring stations had never been discovered by the aliens, which meant humanity knew everything that was happening beyond their solar system. The Zephyrian Empire is mobilizing their entire battle fleet, reported Colonel Ryan Brooks. Intelligence indicates they are preparing to attack the Centauri Republic within the next standard year. Kate nodded as she studied the tactical display. What about the weapon they have been building in secret? The planet killer is nearly complete, Ryan replied. Our deep space reconnaissance confirms it has the power to destroy inhabited worlds from a safe distance. Kate felt a familiar chill as she considered what this meant. The Zephyrians had always been aggressive, but they had never possessed weapons capable of genocide. The exile of humanity had removed the diplomatic pressure that kept such weapons from being built. Now the galaxy was about to see what happened when fear replaced wisdom as the driving force behind military development. Commander Diana Price emerged from the stealth ship Phantom as it docked at the hidden base on the edge of the solar system. Her mission to the Helix Nebula had been dangerous, but successful. The new cloaking technology derived from Voidstalker artifacts had allowed her ship to approach Zephyrian military installations without being detected. Report, Admiral Sullivan said as Diana entered the briefing room. The planet killer is operational, Diana replied. But here is the interesting part. They are not building it to use against us. According to intercepted communications, they plan to use it as a first strike weapon against Centauri Prime. They still think we are contained in our home system, Kate realized. They have no idea we can travel freely throughout the galaxy now. Diana nodded. The quantum tunnel drive remains completely undetected by their sensors. As far as they know, we are still trapped here while they prepare for the largest war in galactic history. Kate studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. The Zephyrians were not the only species preparing for conflict. The Altarians had formed a military alliance with 6 smaller species. The Centauri Republic was developing biological weapons that could target specific genetic markers. Even peaceful species were building weapons they had never needed before. "Sir," Ryan said, "we are receiving a priority transmission from Earth. President Carter wants to speak with you immediately." Call came through on the secure channel that connected military command with the political leadership. President Helen Carter appeared on the main screen looking tired but determined. Behind her, Jake Morrison stood with a group of alien representatives that Kate did not recognize. "Admiral, we have visitors," Helen said. 12 species that voted against the Exile have requested a meeting. The alien delegation was small but significant. Kate recognized representatives from species that had been humanity's closest allies before the vote. The Antaran ambassador Veltar stepped forward to speak for the group. "Admiral Sullivan, our analysis indicates that human exile has destabilized galactic civilization beyond our worst projections," Veltar said through his translator device. "Trade has collapsed, conflicts are multiplying, and species that lived in peace for millennia are preparing for war. We formally request that humanity consider returning to active participation in galactic affairs." Kate considered the request carefully. These species had voted against exile when it would have been safer to follow the majority. They deserved respect for that courage, but humanity was no longer the same species that had been exiled 5 years ago. "Ambassador Veltar, humanity appreciates your position and your courage in opposing the exile vote," Kate replied. However, the galaxy made its choice. They wanted to see what galactic civilization would look like without human involvement. "We are simply allowing them time to fully appreciate the results of their decision." Jake Morrison stepped forward. "Admiral, perhaps we could offer limited assistance. Mediation services for the most dangerous conflicts. We don't have to rejoin the galactic community to prevent a war that could destroy billions of lives." Kate shook her head. The galaxy chose to reject human unpredictability because they feared it would lead to instability. Now they are discovering that human predictability was what kept their civilization stable. The lesson needs to be learned completely, or it will be forgotten the moment the immediate crisis passes. The alien representatives looked uncomfortable with Kate's response, but Veltar pressed the issue. "Admiral, our projections indicate that without intervention, the current conflicts will escalate into a galactic war within 2 standard years. Entire species could be wiped out." "That is certainly possible," Kate agreed. "But it is also possible that the galaxy will learn from this experience and develop better ways of resolving conflicts without relying on human intervention. Change is never comfortable, but it is sometimes necessary." After the alien delegation departed, Kate called a meeting of humanity's senior leadership. The secure conference room filled with the people who had guided humanity through 5 years of exile and transformation. Scientists, military officers, diplomats, and political leaders gathered to discuss what came next. Dr. Alex Turner reported on the latest technological developments. "The deep space exploration program is ready to begin. Our new ships can travel beyond the galactic rim using quantum tunnel drives that leave no trace. We could begin mapping extragalactic space within 6 months." General Amy Foster discussed military readiness. "Our enhanced forces are trained and equipped to handle any threat the galaxy could send against us. More importantly, our mobile defense platforms can project power anywhere in local galactic space if needed." Captain Lisa Chen spoke for the civilian space crews. "Our people are ready for whatever comes next. Morale has never been higher, and everyone understands that we are no longer the same species that was exiled 5 years ago." Jake Morrison raised the question that everyone was thinking. "What happens when the galaxy finally realizes what we have become?" Kate smiled with quiet confidence. "By then it will be too late for them to do anything about it. We will have evolved beyond their ability to threaten or control us. The exile will have accomplished exactly the opposite of what they intended. So we continue to watch and wait?" Helen Carter asked. "We watch and prepare," Kate corrected. "Because when this galactic war begins, We need to be ready for whatever emerges from the ashes. 10 years had passed since the galaxy voted to exile Earth, and the result was a civilization in chaos. The Zephyrian-Centauri War had spread to involve dozens of species, as old alliances crumbled and new conflicts erupted across known space. Trade networks that had existed for thousands of years were gone. The Galactic Council met in emergency session after emergency session, but could not agree on solutions to problems they had never faced before. Then the impossible happened. Long-range sensor stations at the edge of galactic space detected massive energy signatures moving toward inhabited systems. The signatures were unlike anything in the galactic database, but they were clearly artificial and clearly organized into some kind of fleet formation. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Enterprise, flagship of humanity's deep space exploration fleet. Through the main view screen she could see the galaxy that had once been humanity's home, now scarred by war and divided by fear. Behind her ship stretched a formation that would have amazed and terrified anyone who saw it. The human fleet consisted of vessels that seemed to bend light around themselves as they moved. Their hulls were built from materials that combined human engineering with technologies discovered beyond the galactic rim. Power systems based on principles that the galaxy had never imagined drove ships that could cross intergalactic distances in weeks rather than centuries. "Admiral, we are receiving thousands of communication attempts from across the galaxy," reported Commander Sarah Kim from the communication station. "Everyone wants to know who we are and where we came from." Kate smiled as she considered how to respond. Humanity had spent the last 10 years doing more than just watching the galaxy tear itself apart. They had used their quantum tunnel drives to explore beyond the edge of known space, and what they found there had changed everything. "Open a channel to the entire galaxy," Kate ordered. "It is time to reintroduce ourselves." The message that went out carried the voice of Captain Rick Davis, commander of the scout ship Pathfinder. Rick had volunteered for the most dangerous exploration missions and had been the first human to make contact with civilizations beyond the galactic rim. "This is Captain Rick Davis of the Human Deep Space Fleet." His voice carried across the galaxy through communication networks that hadn't heard from humanity in a decade. "We return not as the exiled species you remember, but as representatives of a much larger community. We have spent the last 10 years exploring the universe beyond your borders, and we bring news that will change everything you think you know about your place in the cosmos." The reaction was immediate and intense. Alien governments demanded explanations. Military fleets moved to intercept the human ships. Scientists frantically tried to analyze the energy signatures of the human vessels, but nothing could prepare them for what Rick Davis said next. "The galaxy you know represents less than 1% of the civilizations that exist in this region of the universe. We have made contact with 47 distinct galactic communities and 3 intergalactic federations. Your isolated group of 847 species exists in a tiny bubble of space that the larger universe considers a frontier backwater." The statement shattered everything. The Galactic Council believed about their own importance. They had assumed that their civilization represented the height of development in their region of space. The idea that they were primitives compared to vast communities they had never imagined was almost impossible to accept. Commander Nancy Wells, serving as humanity's new diplomatic representative, addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council from her ship's communication array. The chamber that had once voted to exile humanity was now filled with alien representatives desperate for information about the larger universe. "You exiled us because you feared our unpredictability and our tendency to expand beyond established boundaries," Nancy said. "But you misunderstood our fundamental nature. Humans do not expand to conquer or consume. We expand to explore, to learn, to connect different communities and share knowledge across vast distances." Council Prime Zethkri, now ancient and frail, struggled to comprehend what Nancy was telling them. "You claim to have contacted civilizations beyond our galaxy. Such distances are impossible to cross." Nancy gestured and a holographic display appeared above the council chamber. It showed a 3-dimensional map of local intergalactic space with thousands of points of light, representing different galactic communities. The galaxy that contained Earth was just one small dot among countless others. "Distance is only impossible if you accept the limitations that others place on you," Nancy replied. While you have been fighting over the same resources and territories, we have discovered infinite possibilities. The quantum tunnel drive allows us to travel between galaxies as easily as you travel between star systems. The map zoomed in to show trade routes and communication networks that connected galactic communities across distances the Council had never imagined possible. Humanity was shown as a bridge point connecting their local galaxy to 5 others through permanent tunnel gates that allowed instant travel. "This is impossible," declared the Altarian representative. "No species has ever achieved intergalactic travel." "No species in your isolated community has achieved it," Nancy corrected. "But it is common technology among the advanced civilizations we have contacted. They are actually quite surprised that your galaxy has remained isolated for so long." The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow. Everything they had assumed about the universe was wrong. Their great galactic civilization was actually a small and primitive community that had been too afraid to explore beyond their own boundaries. Dr. Paul Baker, now serving as humanities science advisor, provided the final piece of information that would reshape galactic thinking. "The civilizations we have contacted want to establish formal relations with your galaxy. They are interested in trade, cultural exchange, and joint scientific projects. But they require that any contact be managed by a species they trust." "Which species would that be?" Sethkri asked, though he clearly dreaded the answer. "Humanity," Paul replied simply. "We have spent 10 years proving ourselves to the intergalactic community. They see us as reliable intermediaries who can help your isolated galaxy join the larger universe." The vote to rescind humanity's exile was unanimous, but the response they received surprised everyone in the chamber. President Helen Carter appeared on the communication screen, looking older but wiser after 10 years of leading humanity through their transformation. "We appreciate the gesture, and we bear no ill will toward any species for the exile vote," Helen said diplomatically. "However, we will not be returning to our old role in galactic affairs. We have found our true calling as bridges between different galactic communities. Our home is no longer a single star system, but the infinite expanse of space itself." "You are refusing to rejoin galactic civilization?" Sethkri asked in amazement. "We are offering something much better," Helen replied. "We invite you to join the larger universe. Humanity will serve as your guides and representatives to intergalactic civilization, but the choice is yours to make. You can remain isolated in your small corner of space, or you can discover what lies beyond your self-imposed boundaries." The chamber fell silent as the full implications became clear. Humanity had not just survived their exile, they had used it as an opportunity to transcend the limitations that had held back galactic civilization for millennia. The species that had been feared for their unpredictability and expansion had become exactly what the galaxy needed most: a connection to infinite possibilities that lay beyond the stars.